In Franklin, Tennessee, the air often feels heavier than the weather report suggests. It's a town of deep greens and historic stone, where manicured lawns mask the messy lives lived behind white-painted shutters. My name is Sarah Collier. At 34, I realize every family here carries an unspoken weight. We are experts at quiet endurance, masters of the polite smile that hides a fracturing heart. My story isn't about a loud explosion or a dramatic confrontation. It's about a quiet discovery, a cold revelation that changed the frequency of my existence. It shifted my world from safety to a landscape of shadows in the span of a single afternoon. To understand me, you must go back to 2003. I was 17, worried about SAT scores and teenage crushes. Our home was a suburban sanctuary, smelling of lemon wax and Sunday pot roast. We were the family at the Methodist church who never missed a potluck. My father, Dale, was a successful salesman with a booming laugh and a firm handshake. When he left for a sales conference in Las Vegas that spring, it seemed routine. But when he returned, the atmosphere changed. The air felt thinner, as if the oxygen had been siphoned out. He looked the same, but the man who walked through that front door was a stranger. The discovery happened while I was rummaging through his carry-on for a spare charger. In the side pocket, my fingers brushed against something metallic. It was a silver Nokia phone, small, sleek, and definitely not his work device. It felt like ice in my palm. My thumb hovered over the buttons, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. I opened the messages and froze. I read about staggering gambling losses and liquor-soaked nights in hotel suites. Then I found messages from a 3-day affair with a woman whose name sounded like a soft sigh. I didn't cry or make a sound. I just stood there, the blue glow of that tiny screen illuminating the death of my innocence. For 11 days, I was a ghost. I was the sole keeper of a secret rotting my soul. Every night, I set the table for 4, aligning forks as if our lives weren't shattered. I watched my father kiss my mother's cheek and felt a sickness in my throat. I saw him laugh at my brother Michael's jokes, a performance I alone could see through. It was a terrifying dive into the loneliness of the adult world. I navigated high school knowing the man everyone respected was a lie, a realization that aged me faster than any birthday ever could. I looked at my mother and wondered how she didn't smell the smoke from the fire burning down our lives. By the 11th day, the pressure was unbearable. I couldn't speak the truth. The words were too jagged. I didn't want a scene. I wanted the truth in the light. One Tuesday morning, I walked into my parents' bathroom. I placed the Nokia on the marble counter, face up, open to a message that left no room for lies. It sat there, a technological judge, waiting for my mother to find it. I walked out, hands trembling, knowing the silence would break forever. I could never go back to being just a daughter. I was a witness now. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The truth landed like a physical blow, and as the quiet began to warp, I understood that I would never again live in the shadow of a lie. The weight of what was coming crushed my chest as I waited for the first scream, the one that would tear down the walls of our perfect life. I felt the house holding its breath with me, knowing everything was about to change. Nothing would ever be the same again. And the vow my father had broken in Vegas was now the only thing defining who we were. The fallout was not a sudden explosion, but a slow, agonizing erosion that redefined the very walls of our home. Over the next 8 months, the geography of our residence in Franklin shifted until the map of my childhood was unrecognizable. It started with the small, quiet removals, the heavy oak desk from the study, the removal of my father's favorite worn leather armchair, and the sudden, jarring absence of his heavy footsteps on the stairs at 6 a.m. Our routines, once the sturdy, predictable pillars of our southern existence, dissolved like sugar in hot tea. My mother moved through the halls like a specter, her eyes perpetually red-rimmed and distant, while legal documents and property assessments piled up on the dining table where we once did our algebra homework. Every cardboard box taped shut was a physical manifestation of a memory being discarded, a ritual of erasure. The house felt hollow, a shell of the sanctuary it had once been, and I watched as the life we had carefully constructed was dismantled piece by piece, sold off or tucked away in storage units. Then there was Michael. My brother was only 15, standing at the precarious precipice of manhood when the floor fell out from beneath him. While I was the one who had lit the fuse by placing that phone on the counter, Michael was the one who retreated into a fortress of cold stone. His reaction wasn't one of loud tears or outward teenage rage. It was a profound, icy rigidity that chilled the air around him. I remember watching him during those final weeks before Dale officially moved out. Michael would sit at the dinner table, his back perfectly straight, his eyes fixed on his plate as if studying the china. He ate every single bite with a mechanical, haunting precision, never looking up, never engaging in the heavy, forced small talk my parents tried to maintain for appearances. It was the wound of injustice, deep and festering. He didn't just lose a father, he lost his belief in the inherent fairness of the world. That silence became his shield and his weapon, a quiet, daily rebellion against the chaos he could neither understand nor control. As I moved into my 20s, I began to realize the silver Nokia hadn't just ended my parents' marriage. It had silently recalibrated my internal compass. I discovered I had developed what I call a magnetic north for unavailable men. My first serious heartbreak in college didn't feel like a shock or a tragedy. It felt terribly familiar, a rhythmic return to a state of being I had mastered at 17. I was unconsciously drawn to the subtle signs of emotional distance. The men who kept their phones face down on the table, and those whose affection felt like a prize to be won, rather than a gift freely given. It was as if I were subconsciously trying to rewrite the ending of 2003, seeking out the same potential for betrayal, just to see if I could survive it a second time. I was comfortable in the tension of the unknown, because the known felt like a lie. Then I met Greg. He was kind, steady, and genuinely hardworking, but he was also a man who traveled for a living. He was a consultant, and his life was measured in airport codes and sterile hotel room numbers. I thought I had healed, but the first time I heard the sound of suitcase wheels clicking sharply against our hardwood floors, my heart seized with panic. It was the exact frequency of my father's return from Las Vegas. Every time Greg packed his leather bag for a 4-day trip to Chicago, the ghost of Dale walked through our bedroom. I would stand at the kitchen window, watching his taillights fade as he pulled out of the driveway, feeling that same thinning of the air, that same creeping dread that the man who left might not be the same man who returned. To those of you watching this, perhaps you are also a child of betrayal. Maybe you grew up absorbing the unspoken wounds of your parents, carrying heavy secrets that were never yours to keep. I invite you, the American Heartbeat community, to witness this shared, quiet history with me. Your stories of resilience and the long shadows you've outrun are the threads that bind our common experience. We are not defined by the secrets we kept in the dark, but by the truth we eventually chose to live in the light. It wasn't until I sat in a therapist's office years later that the connection became undeniable. I described my habit of standing at the window, my breath fogging the glass as I watched Greg disappear down the suburban street. My therapist looked at me with a soft, knowing gaze and asked if I realized I had chosen a man who leaves because I am comfortable with absence. It was a revelation that silenced the room. I wasn't afraid of the abandonment itself. I was addicted to the hypervigilance required to anticipate it. Betrayal and abandonment weren't just clinical terms. They were lived ghosts that dictated my pulse. I had built my marriage around a framework of guardedness, convinced that safety was only found in the moments when I was bracing for the other shoe to drop. Naming the wound was the only way to stop it from running my life in silence, and realizing that naming the truth was the only way to finally step out from the shadow of that long-ago trip to Nevada. The sun is just beginning to bleed over the horizon in Franklin, casting thin shadows across our driveway. Greg stands by the trunk of the car, his breath visible in the morning air as he checks his bag. He is heading to Chicago for a 4-day conference. In the years following 2003, this departure would have felt like a countdown to disaster. My pulse would quicken, my mind mapping out how his silence might mean betrayal. As he leans in to kiss me, I feel that familiar tightening in my chest, the ghost of my father whispering that every departure is a potential permanent exit. Greg pulls away and promises to text when he lands at O'Hare. I stand on the porch and watch him drive away, the red glow of his taillights fading into the mist of the Tennessee morning. I walk back into the quiet kitchen, the house still holding the scent of his coffee. There, on the granite countertop, is his iPad. It is face up, the screen dark but loud in the silence. For a second, the air thins. The phantom weight of that silver Nokia phone from 17 years ago returns to my palm, cold and heavy. The urge is visceral. I want to pick it up. I want to scroll through every message, not because Greg has given me reason to doubt him, but because my father taught me that the people you love carry secret lives in their pockets. I stand there, my hand hovering. Then, I take a deep, steadying breath and turn my back. I walk to the coffee maker and begin the ritual of grinding beans. Choosing not to look is my bravest act of defiance against a legacy of suspicion. I am reclaiming my peace, refusing to let 2003 dictate the temperature of my marriage today. I think back to a Sunday call from 2 years ago. It was one of those polite, strained conversations that define my relationship with Dale. We talked about the weather in Nevada and his garden. There was a heavy pause on the line, the kind where you hear the years of unspoken apologies humming in the static. "Are you happy, Sarah?" he finally asked, his voice sounding thinner than I remembered. I looked around my home, at the life I had built out of the wreckage he left. "I'm working on it, Dad," I replied. It was the truest thing I could offer. We don't discuss the silver Nokia or those 11 days of silence. We live in the working on it, inhabiting the civil space between estrangement and forgiveness. Then there is Michael. My brother's path has been a straight line of uncompromising silence. He hasn't spoken to our father in 14 years. At our mother's birthday dinner, I watched him sit with that same haunting stillness he adopted when he was 15. He is a good man, but a part of him remains locked in that fortress of stone. I look at him with compassion, because his wound of injustice is just as valid as my path of guarded contact. He protects his peace by building walls. I protect mine by managing the gates. We are two sides of the same coin, minted in the fires of a broken vow, each finding our own way to survive the fallout. This is the American spirit I recognize. The gritty determination to see things clearly, even when the truth is heavy. I am not perfectly healed, but I am aware. Awareness is the shield that stops the trauma from being passed down. I am preparing for my Sunday call to my father now. I acknowledge the gap between us that will never be filled, but I choose to live in the truth of the woman I have become, rather than the shadow of 2003. I look out the window at the clearing sky and take one last steady breath. Unbroken. God bless you, and God bless America.